and pretty well because we have not been alone. We have been very closely advised and helped by the Secretariat itself. And I told you before, maybe by having him here in your country, he's like someone you know and you have around too much to have a full evaluation, but it's a bless to have Miro that is living, is passing the torch. And I have abused of his friendship to ask advice. And the legacy also of the Slovak chairmanship is great. So we need to simply continue in that direction. And other partners have been very helpful. We have a very, I think, enthusiastic and capable young team. Our people are very committed to this. For Albania, this is first ever international challenge in the international scene, and so we are all eager to do good. And last but not least, we are in a perfect sandwich between Slovaks and Swedes. So, we'll be very applicable chairmanship. Ďakujem.
Lady in the first row, please.
Yes, if you allow me to ask a question in English to you, Foreign Minister Lajčák.
I accept only in Slovak.
No, my Slovak, like your Slovak, is not so great yet. So, sorry if this may sound trivial or technical, but you mentioned this is the end of the Ministerial Council, but at the same time, negotiations are ongoing. So I'm wondering, is the meeting closed or is it actually not closed? And maybe if you could just give us an idea, what are the sticking points? What is still being discussed? What are you hoping to still achieve and adopt, in fact? Thank you.
Well, this Ministerial Council is the symbolic end of our chairmanship, yet our chairmanship lasts until the very last day of December. And the same goes for this Ministerial Council itself. We have already conducted the handover ceremony, the symbolic passing on the torch on Albania, but we have not closed the meeting itself because the expert level negotiations are still going on. There are a number of documents that are to be adopted, still being negotiated. So our experts will continue working for a couple of more hours. That's why I was not in a position to announce now how many documents have been adopted at this Ministerial Council. We will know later. This is the tradition at the OSCE. Simply, the experts want to use every minute that is still at their disposal here. So the real formal closing of the Ministerial Council will come later tonight. I don't want to speculate about the numbers. I mean, there is a list of documents across all three dimensions that are being discussed, and it's always a very, very painful, very difficult negotiations. So I really hope that the spirit of compromise and the win-win approach that has been mentioned so many times by so many ministers will be also transferred at the level of experts, and we will see. So I hope we will end up with a solid list of good documents.
Andrej Matiša, Pravda.
Andrej Matišan,
Ďakujem pekne. Pán minister, samozrejme je to veľký úspech, keď vravíte, že veľká väčšina krajín podporila bratislavskú výzvu, ale predsa by som sa opýtal, aké
the Bratislava appeal. However, I would like to ask you, there is a number of countries that have not supported it. What were their comments on the appeal, why they didn't support it? And that's a question for Mr. Greminger. How the Bratislava appeal can affect and reflect the work of the organization in the future? And the question for Mr. Rama, is Albania somehow going to take the ownership of this Bratislava appeal and get inspired from it in its future work? The traditional work is that you come up with a proposal, you table it, then you negotiate it, you change words, wordings, delete something, add something, and at the end of the day, all 57 countries must approve it. The Bratislava appeal is something different. I wanted to end up with a document that would symbolize our priorities, which means more dialogue, more willingness for compromise, more political willingness to fulfill the Helsinki commitments. I said, this is my document. We are not going to negotiate it. Anyone who wants to endorse it is welcome, and it will make us happy. And I'm very pleased that more than 40 countries have done it, either formally in their comments, speeches, in plenary discussion, or members of delegations have approached me or my colleagues. That's a higher number than I originally expected. I'm not aware of a single country that would reject that document. I know that some countries have approached us. You know, we are shortly ahead of elections in our respective countries. We are not allowed to take on political commitments, or we do not have a mandate from our capitals to authorize it. So in general, this document has enjoyed a very strong response, and I'm very happy that it's going to be something that will be attached to this Bratislava Ministerial Council.
Well, I would hope that the appeal impacts on the way delegations negotiate, deal with pending institutional issues in Vienna, that it will help to get us a decent and timely budget, that it will help us deal more constructively with the many procedural issues that we are grappling with. You know, in a consensus-based organization like the OEC, the agenda of every single OEC conference needs to be adopted by consensus. This takes up much of our time, and instead of focusing on the real security challenges, we lose lots of time and energy in lengthy negotiations on procedural issues that eventually bring outcomes that are very similar from year to year. So I hope that the appeal will lead delegations in Vienna to focus more on the substantive thematic challenges, and we would waste less time on procedural issues. This implies also, and this the Chair in Office has clearly referred to that there is more political guidance by capitals. We need more interest in OEC capitals for what is happening in Vienna. And again, I think that is one of the aims of the appeal, to trigger, to mobilize that attention. Thank you.
Unfortunately, I've gotten information that the Albanian Prime Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Edi Rama, has to leave in 5 minutes. That's why there is a space just for one and the last question. So please.
You just have to answer him. Because,
sorry.
no, I was. You asked me about the Bratislava appeal, and I just want to say the following. When I met Miro first time, it was around 10 years ago, and he came in Albania and found us in one of the rounds of our endless boxing, and political boxing, I mean. And the great thing and the challenging thing about this organization is that no one can lose. And if there is to win, everyone should win. Otherwise, there is no some win and some lose. So no one can lose, which means that we need to to take stock of all progress that is made by the previous chairmanship and bring it further to the other chairmanship. And it's not like when you are elected that you will change the world in the day after and everything that's happened before is just useless. It's the other way around. Everything that has been done before is very, very useful, and possibly we might add something to it with the help of everyone. And so it's OSCE is an organization of a great impact on everyone to cultivate patience and to understand compromise by pain. Not just by necessity, but by pain. So possibly we'll have more compromises, and possibly we'll have more will of listening to each other, and it will go further and further with other chairmanships to come. So for sure, we have the highest appreciation of what the Slovak chairmanship has done, by no doubt. And we are very, very happy that we have to take the torch from here and leave it then in a year later to the Swedes.
So now the last question.
Thank you. I'm Tabriz Jafarov. I'm an independent expert in international law. First of all, I would like to thank you to the chairmanship and for this ministerial council. I think that it is a positive example organizing. You did it. My question is about the implementation of the decisions of the OSCE, that is according to the international law and the principles and norms of the international law. But so many decisions you have, but we cannot, maybe you cannot implement them. And that's why, therefore, lots of the parts of the OSCE region we see separatism and separatist movement. Regard to the countries which violate the norms and principles of the international law and also decision of the OSCE, and yet we are saying you have to respect it, etc. But what time we'll say that you will do it, you will respect it, otherwise we will make to respect or do it. And how do you think about that, Mr. Minister of Foreign Affairs and also Mr. Secretary General? If you want, Mr. Excellency, you can answer to this question, that what is your plan, what is your actions on this issue? Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, OSCE is an organization which is based on consensus. As you know, every decision has to be agreed by all 57 participating states. OSCE has no mechanism for enforcing its solutions. Well, it's very difficult to enforce solutions even for the Security Council of the United Nations nowadays. But if something has been agreed by 57, it becomes part of the OSCE's commitments, and it generates a political commitment and also the political pressure. Then all this adds to the framework or code of conduct, if you wish, that regulates the behavior of the country. If you violate it, it's written what you should do and what you should not do, and it's clearly visible that you have violated it. So it's the moral pressure, it's the political pressure, and also the moral and political responsibility. So I wish we were in a position to enforce every document we have adopted, not only within the OSCE, but also with other international organizations. At the same time, we shall try to create an environment that will not allow states, countries, particularly to violate these conditions or their commitments and walk away without any consequences. So this is what we are trying to do. It's a process, step-by-step process. And the more times we are able to agree on some rules, agree by 57, the stronger this framework will be.
It's true that OSCE has many assets, but we have no sticks and hardly any carrots to offer. However, what we do, and we do it on a very systematic and regular basis, we hold states accountable. You have a permanent council every Thursday morning. You have current issues. there, any state is free to hold another state accountable in terms of principles and commitments of the OSCE. This is happening on a weekly basis. On hard security issues, this is done in the FSC. The MC is another forum where this is happening. So, yes, no sanctions, no sticks, but at least I think a very powerful platform to hold states accountable and to remind them of their principles and commitments.
What are you insisting?
Last question is about culture, because now OSCE member states have many countries which have same bad experience.
You don't know Enver Hoxha, and it's good for you. Okay. Let me answer. Believe me.
Please do not interrupt the press conference.
Believe me, there is nothing compared to Enver Hoxha. So don't compare anyone that is within the OSCE to Enver Hoxha, because then you don't know anything about history. Nothing. So no, firmly no. You don't know Enver Hoxha. You don't know, and better for you. So I want to say the following: that OSCE is not parliament of winners and losers of election, and it's a body based on consensus and on the goodwill of everyone. And of course, there's no instruments to impose anything when it comes to singular states. But for sure, and I come from a country where OSCE has played a fundamental role in the transition from communism to democracy. And I can tell you, if I would try to imagine Albania without the OSCE presence and without the OSCE systematic efforts, would not be the country we have today in terms of capacity to protect values and to stick to the rules. And the last thing I would say is that it's not a direct power to impose anything, but it's an indirect force, because it influences others that have maybe more leverage while is reporting or is standing on issues and on matters. So yeah, it was an organization I didn't like at all in the beginning when I entered politics, but now I learned by experience to really admire and to respect, because it's really a force for good, and this is by no doubt the basic value of OSCE. Okay, it may look very boring sometimes, but it's very, very useful and is healing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. I know there are some other requests.